So my name is Steven. I run a company called Potent Ponics. I also have a YouTube channel and podcasts and all kinds of other resources on the internet for people. Um, and I've worked specifically with aquaponics and living soil all over the world, everywhere from all across North America to Africa to Thailand and back. And then I've worked with clients on aquaponics facilities, either vegetable facilities or cannabis facilities on 6 of the 7 continents at this point. So it's been a lot of fun. And yeah, I have a lot of experience working particularly with aquaculture fed systems where we run either large scale concrete tanks and then feed the irrigation through that to large scale soil systems like I've done in a couple different places, or fully recirculating almost like a hydroponic system with fish in it.
Good experience in so many different areas. Yeah. And I know, as far as like organic or regenerative, you really have a ton of knowledge in there as well. We had a conversation on Garden Talk. We had a couple different conversations that were really, really good. But one of the ones we focused on was growing in the different areas that you've grown in. Jamaica, Zimbabwe, South Africa, Thailand. You've grown in so many different areas, and they each kind of have different things you need to do in order to grow there successfully, right? Because they're different climates that are there. It's not all, one way to grow in each area. So I think that's crazy that you have those different experience. And maybe, one of the first questions right here off the bat is like, what do people need to know about growing in different areas like that?
Sure. So I think the biggest thing is to learn what your local problematic issues are going to be. Like, is it mold? Is it insects? Like, what is going to be the primary thing that you're going to have to learn to have a solution for? And then what is your toolbox of options? So when I went to Africa, I went and made myself a list of all the biocontrols I could get. And since most of your biocontrols in Africa come in either through Kenya or through South Africa, because those are the only 2 countries really that manufacture any or even import them, I had to kind of make a master list of, okay, what are my options if I do run into a problem? And things like that. That's actually what happened when COVID outbreak was all the borders got sealed. So we had to make our own pesticides. And that's where I learned about IPMO from Chris Trump and, really started running that at a large scale. And that's how some of these things kind of came to be, was just out of necessity. One of the biggest things that helps a lot with that is iNaturalist. Anyone that's into foraging or just identifying local plants and mushrooms and things like that. iNaturalist actually works around the world, and that's helped me out quite a bit when I didn't know what something was. At least I could figure out what genus it was in, or is it something that's going to maybe attack my plants or not, or can I leave it on there, or is it a beneficial? So that's definitely something that helped out quite a bit in terms of resources. And then sometimes too, you have really cool museums. Like a lot of countries have really wonderful agricultural museums. I can think of there's a super kick-ass one in Chiang Mai and in Thailand, where they have almost all the different, well-known agricultural pests taxidermied into one wall. And you can go in there and visually see what they look like, which was super helpful for me to recognize a couple of things I hadn't run into yet. And that's another good resource that, it exists in a lot of different places as well for people that are kind of jumping into a new place. But the biggest thing is being prepared for fungi. I think that's the number one thing, especially in the tropics. If you aren't ready to fight, fungus, and you aren't dosing your Lactobacillus or some other, beneficial microbe that's going to be a little army on your plants, you're going to run into problems immediately. And we saw that a lot in Thailand, where people were not prepared for Septoria. A lot of people had never seen Septoria because they came from, west of the Rockies, and just got obliterated because the tropical Septoria is so much more aggressive. I mean, it'll melt your plants in 10 days if you don't have some kind of preventative on it.
Gosh, that's insane. And I thought having to keep my own prying fingers off was a hard enough task to have to worry about, and considering fungi, that's absolutely incredible. And you mentioned one preventative. What was it?
Lactobacillus is one of the best ones. Yeah.
That's insane.
So how does that can you talk about the creation process of Lactobacillus? Because you can actually do it just with home stuff, right? Like rice water. And can you walk us kind of through the process there to create your own lab?
Sure, yeah. So you just take 1 gallon or 4. I typically make 5-gallon batches. So I do 4 gallons of milk with a half gallon or a quarter gallon of rice wash. So take your rice that you're normally going to cook, rinse off the dust and the little debris that's on the rice normally. Normally, just pour that down the sink, save it into a bowl, put a piece of cheesecloth over it or some kind of other, if you have an old bubble bag, that works too, as long as it's 220 microns, something like that. Sit that out in the shade for a day or two where it has good airflow. Don't let it sit in the sun or it'll cook and it'll kind of defeat the purpose. But air collection on rice wash actually helps you collect not only the lactobacillus that's locally in your area that's airborne, but also some of the local yeasts, which also help with a little bit with some of the breakdown of the lactobacillus. So by having that inside of your rice wash, you then combine that with the milk and then let that sit for anywhere from 24 to 36 hours. If it's really cold, maybe 48 hours. But it's entirely temperature dependent on how quickly it's going to replicate. And then it's going to separate. So you'll have your curd on top. Now you can take that curd and refine it into cheese if you want to make your own homemade cheese. You can make mozzarella super easy with it. Or you can, and then the liquid portion below that is your lactobacillus. And typically you would spray that anywhere from 1 to 600 ratio for heavier maintenance to a 1 to 1,000 ratio for just a general, like, I don't have any problems kind of thing. And it works extremely well. You can also ferment things in it too. So you can make the labs and ferment it, particularly things like horsetail that have a vitamin B uptake issue in them. It reduces vitamin B. A lot of people think it's great for silica, which it is, but it will reduce the plant's ability to uptake vitamin B, which is going to slow down the plant growth. So by adding lactobacillus, which has a lot of vitamin B as a byproduct, you can kind of counteract those effects. So,
and as you're applying this as a foliar, right? Or sorry, applying it on the external. I have zero clue about this process, right? So you're applying it to the outside of the plant because the fungus is only is affecting primarily the outside of the plant.
Yep. So you can spray it all the way till about week 2 or 3 of flower. It is kind of acidic, so it can dissolve your trichome stalks. So it's not something you want to use. You can use it as a last resort, like in an emergency kind of thing, like I'm going to lose my crop. But generally you do want to stop using it after about week 2 or 3 of flower just because of that issue. But it's great as a foliar and then great as a root drench. You can use it as a root drench in flower. That's not a problem. It's strictly the foliar application that's an issue in flower because of the acidity of it more than anything else.
Thank you.
You said root drench as well. How often would you be doing a root drench for it?
I would just do that kind of as needed. If I have a problem or I suspect that I have an issue in my roots, like Pythium or something like that, it's a great way to knock it out. The other cool thing is it eliminates E. coli, salmonella, and other human-borne food pathogens. We actually use it in aquaponics on the off chance that we have an E. coli. There's a couple different types of non-human pathogenic E. coli that we run into sometimes in aquaponics because of the aquaculture portion of it. And if we dose it for 2 weeks at a 1 to 1,000, we can actually completely eliminate that without having to bring the system offline or use antibiotics or anything else. So it can be another really good organic way to treat your aquarium. If you have a fungal outbreak in your aquarium, it's a great way to treat that. If you have fungus growing on the wood in a shrimp tank, or you have a sick fish that has a fungal infection, secondary fungal infection, it'll eliminate it without harming anything else.